You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in absolutely gorgeous Northport, Florida. And I hope that it is gorgeous in Northport, Florida, because I'm actually sitting right now up in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, broadcasting from my hotel room because my granddaughter is going to be turning a whopping 3 years old. So we've got a celebration tomorrow. She actually turned 3 on 7/11. So happy birthday to Ellie. So hopefully the parents will play this back 2 years from today when she'll really listen to the show. But I've got a really special guest in the house, and he's been a vital part of keeping Northport really focused on moving forward on some different topics and with Warren Miller Springs, Price Boulevard, and also Northport Forward as an organization building that effort to get the community involved. And I want to welcome Brian Lincoln back to the show. So welcome, Brian.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. And it is a beautiful day here in Northport today.
Sweet. We, we've had some really hot topics on Warren Miller Springs and different things that are happening. We're going to get back into that a little bit, but I want you to tell me what the value for people to get involved in Northport Forward is, and what you have, the openings for people to get involved doing.
Sure. I think I'd start with my own story. I got involved with Northport Forward as a board member because I saw an opportunity to be involved and not just a passive observer of what's going on in the city, but to get involved with what's going on, attend meetings, talk to commissioners, talk to other people who are vital participants in the play that's happening out in front of us in the real world. And so I had some time and I had the interest to delve into these things. And, Northport Forward has provided me a platform in order to be allowed into the conversation almost. I could do it as a private citizen, but being part of an organization kind of opens up that opportunity window even wider. I've gotten access to commissioners that I'm not sure your average Joe on the street might have. But when you talk about, getting a message out to the citizens of Northport, people who have a message want to be a part of that. And one of the things, there's our mission statement right there, is to educate and inspire and inform Northport citizens working with the city to build a vibrant economy and stimulate that community spirit. And really, community spirit sounds a bit vague, but it's almost the most important part of it. I want to feel like this is my home. I've been here for a little less than 2 years, and I'm trying to get that feeling of this is my home. I mean, it's creeping in on me. I spent 34 years in Georgia, and it was my home, but it didn't really feel like it because I wasn't sure that's where I was going to stay. And I moved to Northport in order to stay here, make this my home. And that's why I wanted to get involved, because I want to know what's happening in my city. I want to be involved with what's happening in my city so I can do my part to make sure that we do what's best for us. And so, Northport Forward, the organization, got started a couple of years ago. And, like everybody else, everything else with the pandemic, there was a break in there. And we've picked up the ball again a few months ago. And we're in the process of designing a new website so that it's much more easily navigable and has the ability to contain more of the articles and information that we're discussing on your show and in our separate presentations to organizations around the city, so that people have a place to go, that they can find pertinent information in a pretty quick time frame. So I know I reached out to the city just recently with Josh Taylor and asked him about, how can we get some information on how budgets work and so forth, because I really wanted to understand how things like Warm Mineral Springs are paid for. And he gave me some great information. He pointed to me a couple of sessions that the city had done for budgets, which I'm in the process of reviewing that and some other things. And, I want to make sure I have what I'm looking for, which is, pretty high level information, but I'm trying to find out, what budgets really are there? Because I don't come from a financial background. So I need to have kind of budget 101, if you will. So what kinds of budgets does the city have? How do they interact with each other? What other financial tools does the city have to rely on, like grants and surtax and so forth and so on? So I'm in the process of reviewing some information. And if it's not all there, what I'm going to propose to Josh Taylor is that we maybe have another event where we can have the city employees come in and provide the information to your everyday citizen. For this is what we have to work with in the city for budgets. This is where the money comes from. This is how it's doled out. This is how it's transferred intra-city budgets, if you will. And so I think that can go a long way to informing the public on that topic.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to bring something into the fold too, because I have a Vanessa Carasona on Fridays, the first Friday of the month. And in the past, when she was a commissioner, she had really in-depth conversations about budget and how the budgets work. And truly, we got into a really good discussion the first Friday of this month. And she had a lot to say on the topic of budget. In your review of what you now know of as a profitable Warm Mineral Springs, would you consider that on a business side of things, would you consider that a solid, true picture of the true budget? Or is there other components involved according to your conversation that you had?
Well, so my conversation didn't really get that far, but the reason for my conversation is exactly what you're saying, and I think people who are paying any amount of attention at all are probably hearing several versions of what's going on, and I'm trying to get down to reality so that it's understood. Hey, this is how Warm Mineral Springs operates. This is the revenue that's pulled in. These are the expenses that are paid out. These are the other operational costs that are handled under different budgets, maybe different even departments. I think there's some of that going on, and it's not exactly clear. Now, I understand we're talking about government, and from my experience, when you get into government, you get into the weeds because there seems to be 10 ways to do everything that needs to be done. So I really would like to understand, when it comes to Warm Mineral Springs, the details on how much does it cost to operate that facility, how much does it bring in, and not just operate it from the standpoint of paying the or is it National and State Parks business. I forget the name of their company that actually runs the day-to-day operations. But there's also maintenance that they don't take care of. There's also landscaping that they don't take care of. There's also alligator removal that they don't take care of, which I was reading in the paper the other day. It happened. So, I think there's more to it than just, this is how many people show up, and this is what the revenue is. And so, and this is what it costs to pay the operators there on site, and then the rest is profit. Because I don't think that's an accurate statement. I'm not saying that there isn't some quote unquote profit left over at the end of the day, but that's where you get into, well, it's just got approved for $9.2 million. If it was making a profit, I wouldn't think it would need all that money. But again,
the other side of that money, just bringing it into the fold. And if there's somebody listening out there, one of the commissioners, they can feel free to add into this if we're incorrect, but an operational budget is one slice of the pie. And I know that they're touting that on that side of the budget, it's marked profitable. But when we pay $5 million for the park to begin with, and then we put another $5.5 million. I was being nice.
What's a half a million between friends?
Well, and when you spend five, what is a half? Honestly, it's a minor technicality, because the calculation of debt to profit margin, those numbers aren't involved. Because if you took those two numbers and we're at 14.5 or 14.7, I read something the other day that Commissioner McDowell said that it wasn't 20 million. I agree. It probably isn't 20 million that we've spent buying it right now, but we at least have 14 and some change, maybe 15 involved in it. And that should be part of the budget that everybody keeps claiming that it's making money. Well, if you're making money and you spent that kind of money, all you got to do is show me how you spent it, and then how you brought it in to zero it out. And I don't know that anybody has that budget. So I think that is a hot topic for people to understand, because less than 1% of the population of Northport even attend War Memorial Springs.
Yeah, I took the attendance information, which came with a pie chart, and I broke it down by resident, non-resident, and so forth. And because you get a discount on your day pass if you're a resident of Sarasota County, and so War Mineral Springs doesn't differentiate between a Northport resident and a Sarasota County resident. So I took all of the resident figures and added them all up, and I did a kind of just a proportional breakdown of what percentage of Sarasota County population is Northport, and just broke it out that way. And I come up with about there's 439,000 people in Sarasota County, and Northport's got about 75,000 people. So when you break that out, of the 4,102 paid visits for Sarasota County residents, which would include Northport, 83% would be from outside of Northport, and 17% would be from Northport. And that 17% of the 4,100 resident paid visits is 697 people from Northport citizens. So 700. And unless and until someone else gives me a better number, that's the number I'm going to keep saying, that we have 700 Northport citizens that use War Mineral Springs.
And I want to be clear with you though, on your point of view. You're not saying shut the park down.
Not at all.
You're not saying get rid of the park.
Not at all. I want that park there. I mean, there are people who, and the mayor is one of them, who absolutely love and appreciate that park, and they have perceived health benefits from that park. That's fine, and I think that it offers more than just the perceived health benefits. It's got a geological part to it that's extremely interesting. It's got an archaeological part to it that's extremely interesting. And I know the University of Miami has artifacts that were found at the bottom of this sinkhole that are, important artifacts to establishing when mankind lived in this area. Now, I think that's extremely interesting. And I think that needs to be preserved. My personal take on the historical value of the buildings is a little bit different than some enthusiasts. But, that's just me, and I can live with that. I mean, I'm not going to go fight a battle that's already over. And there's approved money to be spent on phase one of the park renovation, which includes restorations to the existing buildings, utility infrastructure, which is the water and sewer lines, and parking lot improvements. Those are the three things that are included in the $9.2 million. So that's been voted on. To me, that's a done deal, and I'm not going to argue that. I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to argue. I think at this point, Warm Mineral Springs Park, we need to look at that for its original intent when the city bought it, was that it was going to be a driver of economic development. And so I think the 62 acres, which is outside of the immediate springs and the buildings that are there as part of the springs, there are 62 acres plus that 21, I think it is, or 20 acres. So the 62 acres, we can do something with that that can drive some economic development. And I think that's probably where, you know, the discussion should go. You know, that's what we can do something about. And I know that all of the commissioners at the June 4th commission meeting, every commissioner agreed to be open to looking at other opportunities to develop that property other than the city paying for something. So that's on videotape. Can't deny it. It's there. All five said they would look into it and be willing to and open to those types of arrangements, whether it's a P3 or some kind of hybrid or a partnership of some sort. I think that's ideal. And the city sits in the driver's seat, and we should never forget that. And we will work with who we can work with to bring something to that 62 acres that's going to have an impact outside of those 62 acres. Because, you know, I think of Warm Mineral Springs Park. I mean, that's a lot of acreage to just sit there as, you know, fields and palm trees and whatever. Let's do something with that makes it a centerpiece for our city. But that doesn't mean we have to pay for it out of our taxes or out of any other fund that we might be using for something that's more beneficial to more people in the city. So if we can go outside of the city for financing and development, then I think that's the way to go.
So
that way, yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to ask you a quick question, because you just said something that rattled around in my head a little bit. And you said to make this a centerpiece of Northport. So if I were to ask you a question as a newer resident of Northport, can you tell me what the centerpiece is of Northport today?
For me, it's my yard.
Well, for the city, what is it?
Well, you know, I don't know what the centerpiece is. I'm assuming that it's the Brave Stadium.
I was going there, but my question, my whole thing around that is that was designed for economic development, and it's got economic development written all over it. So if we're talking about in a comparison to look at what we have at the Atlanta Braves Stadium, we've got an economic driver sitting there, and it's producing. We could do the same thing with logical approaches at Warm Mineral Springs. It seems to me like we're analyzing the two economic drivers in two totally different categories.
Yeah, one is an economic driver, and one of them is a park.
Right, and yet it's being labeled a park with an economic driver. And what it is a park with Warm Mineral Springs that brings money. Mm-hmm. Well, it's already bringing money, and it's already created debt, but they've eliminated the debt by putting it in a different budget. And now we want to talk about it as an economic driver. But my confusion as a show host and as a long-term resident of Northport, the same budget criteria that the Atlanta Braves use and that we use on economic drivers around the ballpark, the same people who imagine them coming here are not using that same criteria around the next economic driver that they're putting $14 million into plus. And it doesn't seem to me to make any sense when you tell me it's an economic driver and the park makes money, but yet you're going to eliminate the part that really could make money and benefit the city as a whole by covering expense. You have anything to add about that?
Well, like I said, there was 697 people from Northport that have been to that park, which means there's about 74,300 people who haven't. Those people don't really care that much. So you have a small group of people who have a very heightened awareness of the park and love for the park, literally love for the park, that are protecting that park the best way they know how. I think that getting the commissioners to agree that the 62 acres can be looked at differently than the 21 acres, in my mind, is a small victory that we will need to take. And because the reality is 3 people decide what happens in this city. 3.
That's true. That's true.
And so you can argue all day about that, or you can say, all right, well, those 3 people voted to spend $9.2 million on a park that is purported to be a profitable business. And then there's lots of information that says that it's probably not. But I don't know, that's, like I said earlier, I'm not a financial person, but I've started recently looking at the GAAP, which is the generally accepted accounting practices, which I believe cities are required to follow either that or something very similar to that. And so that's my reasoning for trying to jump into understanding the budgets and how budgets are established and set up and what the intra-city relationships are between these budgets. Because it seemed to me, and like I said, I'm new to a municipality running a business, is running a municipality. So I'm learning as I go here. But it seems to me that everything is on the table at any time to the commissioners. If they want to take money from A to pay for B, then all they got to do is vote on it. I'm hoping that it isn't that simple, but it sure seemed like it was. On June 4th, there were several Parks and Rec projects that were approved and funded and just ready to go, waiting on a timeline, I guess. And they were just stripped of their funding, and it was put towards Warm Mineral Springs.
So I'm going to ask you something here real quick, and I'm going to draw this right back to the beginning of the show. Okay. And I think you can answer this question and link the two together with activity in Northport Forward by residents who have not participated at this point. So my question is, we have a small group of people who have now put their impression on what the park is going to be, because we have a huge population of voters who, quite frankly, aren't involved, and they don't seem to care. The problem is, every time their taxes go up, that's when they're caring, and that's when they get boisterous. And it's too late because these votes have already taken place. Yeah. With Northport Forward, you're trying to get that preemptive attack versus post-attack. Is that true?
That is true. So when issues come up, we, Northport Forward, our mission is to make those visible to as many people as possible. So, Facebook is a wonderful tool that lots of people are on, and so is Northport Forward. And we intend to use that to reach out to our followers. We have a fairly good number of followers, but I think we can have a lot more if we can get into a rhythm with certain people and having certain information, and it comes out and they're followers of us. They get it on their feed so that they know what's going on. I had big eyes and big hopes when I started that, we could get a lot more people, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people maybe aware of what's going on. I think that expectation is a bit high. Not that I'm giving up on it.
You got to get 100 at a time.
Yeah. 50 would be okay.
50, 25. I understand. I've been part of the process in Northport now for 22 years. I understand that for 22 years that I've been here, I can honestly say that we've had the same issue for 22 years of my residency. And I'm frustrated in the mere fact that, I'm holding a show every week trying to get information out. And yet the frustration is the people who need to really pay attention the most aren't the people who are voting for Warren Mineral Springs. It's the people that don't go and don't understand it. And quite frankly, they're not looking at it. Yes, they're busy. Yes, they're working. I understand you're driving away to go to work. I understand you got kids. Been there, done that. Did all those things and stayed involved. How do you intend to get people? This is a really tricky question for you because we just said how frustrating it is to get people involved. If people don't get involved with Mineral Springs right now, and the voices, the limited, and I'm going to say limited because they're not overpowering numbers, okay? Right. But they have enough strength in their group that it's so easy for a commissioner right now to vote for their cause because nobody else is talking. Right. So when you have one side, and I'm going to go back to this, when the squeaky wheel is out there, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If nobody's paying attention to the squeaky wheel, they're just going to keep getting the grease. And it seems to me, and I haven't asked that direct question, and the next commissioner is on Monday, and I will be asking that question, is it always the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, or is there some common sense behind what we're doing? I'm not saying that the $9.5 or $4 million wasn't some common sense involved, because there's some things that had to happen with that park that are truly part of keeping the structures and business flow going the right way. Some of that is okay. I'm really struggling from this standpoint in listening to guests on my show continue to talk about what might be coming. And it doesn't sound like taxpayers in the end are going to be jumping up and down for joy, but there might be 1,000 people in Northport that say, we love it. And yet it's the same people who are complaining about the pool, and they're not using the same status with the pool, but they want to fill the pool in. They're not going to fill in Warren Mill Springs. They're not going to fill in the pool. We have what we have. Now, how do we best utilize it and make both of those two things focal points for people to go to and understand they can pay to get in, they can pay for swimming lessons, they can pay for all these things and utilize the parks in the right way, but also have an economic driver attached to it that brings enough revenue back in to capture some of the costs along the way, and really maybe advance some other things in the city. And I'm until somebody can explain to me how a 62-acre park is going to help advance that, I'm struggling. As a show host and a citizen, I'm deeply puzzled with that theory because I know it's got failure written all over it. Because you can't set it up for that high of an expectation without having some numbers that are going to flow into it besides admission of $5 to go look at birds.
Yeah. Yeah. I reviewed the master, quote unquote, master plan. And every time I hear someone from the city, including commissioners, talk about the master plan, it is in a slightly different way than what's written. Now, I come from a regulatory affairs background in medical devices. When something is written about a medical device, every single word matters. And so when I read this stuff, like a master plan for Warm Mineral Spring, every word matters to me. And so when I hear commissioners and city employees talking about Warm Mineral Springs plan, it's always different than what was written down. So you never know what you're really dealing with in the end. And as far as you know, it sounds like you're trying to get to a point of how do we do the right thing for the city? And that gets back to voting the people into these commission seats, because you want to have people that are in those positions who know what they're doing when it comes to building businesses or running an actual city or dealing with contracts. And so I don't think we have that in total. I know we have some, and we have to go with what we have because that's the way this government works. But you know, elections matter. Elections matter. Who you put in those 5 seats is going to matter. Now, as far as getting somebody interested in Warm Mineral Springs who doesn't go there or doesn't know it exists, I don't know that we're going to get that. Because people are not interested in things that they're not interested in. And when you talk about $9.2 million spread out over, I don't know, 50,000 taxpayers in Northport, it's not that big a number. It's really not. So why is Brian Lincoln getting all up in arms about, spending $9.2 million on a park? Because to me, $9.2 million is a lot of money that could be spent someplace else, where the opportunity to have an outside company come in and develop the park into an economic driver the way that Northport wants it to be developed without spending any taxpayer money, that was thrown out. And so now we're spending the $9.2 million in surtax money that could have gone to an infrastructure project that is not going to be handled by anyone other than the city. So you eliminate possibilities for stretching our money further. And you eliminate opportunities for keeping our taxes the way they are, if not lowering them over years in multiple projects that are handled better. So, I'm certainly not happy about spending that much money from surtax on a project that could be paid for by someone else. And we get exactly the same thing, except better, bigger, more revenue,
right?
Less headaches. So, I'm a little frustrated on that side of it. But, how do you get people interested in what they're not interested in? And that's my challenge. And from a Northport Forward perspective, I was reading in the paper about this young professionals to host a festival on August 5th. I'm going to be there. I'm going to talk to these young people. Say, hey, you want to live in Northport the rest of your life? Because you're not going to if you don't get on the program with getting economic development underway. If you don't get infrastructure built in so that businesses can actually look at Northport and go, yeah, let's go there, and they can just start building their buildings and not have to worry about is there water, is there sewer, is there what do we do? And then we have 2 years of discussion about, do we want to put water and sewer out to well, of course we do. We want that. And I think we need young people involved, because I'm not young. I'm retired. So, whether there's a job here or not, as long as taxes don't go through the roof, and I know Peter Bartolotta is concerned about that too, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 a year taxes for Northport, forget it. I'm probably out too. But, if it stays reasonable, who cares, right? Now, to me, that's not responsible living. That's not responsible citizenry. And so that's what I want to promote.
And put that article back up there real quick, because I'm gonna give that group a shout out. The young professionals, they're an up and coming powerful voice, and they are fiery and they're organized and they're ready to go. That would be a great opportunity for you to attach to them. I know that group of people. They're really I think future rock stars in Northport. And depending on the direction they want to go with it. But the one thing that I've noticed is they are attracting a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's also that saying is that the more you can get people educated on a topic, and the more that you can draw interest. And I think what we're lacking, and what we're trying to do with shows like this, is get some education out there, get people to share it. They're doing a great job getting their voice heard because they're promoting themselves. And they took a group of about 5 or 10 of them, and they built their organization like I built my Buckeye group, one voice at a time. But when you add one, the next time you're adding 2, and the next time you're adding 5, and the next time you're adding 8, and that's exactly how you build the organization they're building right now. And I think they're going to be an asset to other topics that are out there that are going to matter to them, because they are that up and coming group that the tax base is going to change a lot for them.
Yeah. And, I've been saying for a little while now that, Northport is what, 60 years old, 61, 62. And I fully expect it to be around another 40 years. Do you?
100%.
Yeah. So on our Northport's 100-year anniversary, what is this city going to look like? Is it going to actually have a personality by then? Are we really going to know what the city center is by then? Are we going to have families wanting to move here because it's Northport, Florida, and it's got things to offer that other cities don't? Let's think about that. Let's think about years out. We get high schoolers right now that when they retire, are they going to want to retire in Northport? I hope so.
Well, and I'm going to talk to Mr. English here real quick, because I don't think we're talking about the diversity of and I kind of agree with him. It is a very diverse commission. I'm not picking on anybody on the commission. I'm just saying that as a city, we're limited on involvement. We have a diverse commission, but we do not have diversity when it comes to voice structure, because when you have 1,000 people dictating what happens and the other 69,000 not caring, that's not a diverse city as far as the voting population. And if we don't fire up the voting population, I would love to use Mr. English's idea that we were a diverse voting population too. And I don't think he can actually say that we're a diverse voting population, because as a city, we're not represented at all when it comes to vote. People just don't do it, and they need to step up to the plate. Please put Peter Bartolotta's comment up there again. Get others excited about the possibilities. It starts with 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, so on. I agree with him on that.
That was your point earlier.
You start right. If you don't vote, you don't be. Well, I'll dot that myself too. Because I agree with him. I've met with Mr. English. I love him to death. I think he's a great influence on a lot of matters, and he's going to be on the show soon. And I'm excited about having him on the show, because if we don't start having diverse conversations, this isn't meant to be one way. This is meant to get people started, get people involved, get people fired up. And that's what Northport Forward is representing, isn't it?
It is essentially. I mean, it's the whole idea of Northport Forward is to make sure that the information was out there to the general population so that they could get, if not involved, at least informed as to what's happening so that they could take steps to promote one way or another, however they're feeling about or thinking about the particular issue. If they understand the issue, they're more likely to take some action about it, one way or another. And I'm not saying which way, whatever they want to do, but Northport Forward's job, in my mind, and in our mission statement, is to provide information, complete information as possible, so that the ordinary person can take that information and combine it with what the city puts out and anything else that they can find, make decent decisions and help direct the future of this city. I mean, we need to think more than just the next election. We got to think a generation from now. What are we going to have? How is this city going to be formed in the next 20 years? Right? 20 years seems like a long time if you look at it day by day, but believe me, 20 years goes by in a snap of the fingers. So we need to be thinking about the future. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say something because, or ask you something because the way that Mr. English said that, I'm wondering, and Mr. English, you can type in your response or answer it later when you're on the show. We do have a diverse commission. We have a commission that's diverse, and I think every single one of them care about every topic they're voting on. I'm not questioning their heart to the city of Northport. I wouldn't do that. They put way too many hours and way too much value in their life into being a commissioner for Northport. So this is not a direct connection to how they are. But I want to take the diversity question because I love his approach. We're not picking on the diversity of the commission, but I'm wondering if we had a more diverse, boisterous city, would that vote have turned out the same way, or would it have been easy not to get people involved so that the vote could take place? If you don't let the mass get involved, then it's easier to vote because you kept the diversity out. If you don't let everybody have a voice, now they have to care about their voice, okay? So I'm not saying they're stopping their voice, but there's definitely a quiet side and a loud side. That doesn't make for diversity decision by a diverse commission.
Like I would say instead of loud and quiet, you have active and inactive. So you have people who are involved, right? And from what I'm seeing, there are a number of community-minded organizations in Northport, more than I ever thought existed, really. And there are probably hundreds of people that are members of these organizations, and you end up with, several thousand that are members. Yep. And within those groups of people, I think you have your most active people, most active citizens. And so, the rest of the folks here in Northport, the other 70,000 people, they have choices. They're just not choosing to be active. It's not like they don't have a chance to voice their opinions, because they certainly do. I have the same opportunity, and everyone else has the same opportunity I do to go to commission meetings and to fill out the little card and go stand up front and say, this is what I think about this, and this is whatever. And there's my voice. And there, you can email any of the commissioners at any time. I reached out to the city and they responded. And it's like it's amazing. They do this,
Right.
but they're not going to chase you down to say, hey, you need to talk to me about Warm Mineral Springs. No, they're not going to do that. And they don't have to. They shouldn't have to. But, so that's the kind of the point of Northport Forward. Because, there are enough people that think that the direction that Northport's taking towards, business development, and it's, in the case of Warm Mineral Springs, how we handle that towards business development, that it was important enough that we thought, look, I don't think that there's enough people that understand why this should or shouldn't be this way or that way. And so let's make sure that the population understands what's happening here. And at least, we've done our part to communicate details as much as we know them and can put them together. And so, it's just a matter of being active now. And I know when I've done, local surveys as to, hey, what would it take for you to support $9.2 million for Warm Mineral Springs? And, comments would come back to me as like, I don't care, or sell the place, or doesn't matter to me, or, pretty much anything but what you might expect from that kind of a question. The lack of interest is astounding. And so, it's easy to see how a few people can get big things done and certain directions followed. And it's not like anybody has taken any kind of devious track towards, misleading people. It's not that at all. It's a matter of interested or not interested, active or not active. And I'm taking it as a challenge for Northport Forward to get out more, to talk to more people, to try to bring them into the fold. I mean, Northport Forward, we're looking for volunteers. We want people to come in who maybe they have a background in finance. I would love to have somebody spend a little time with us and say, hey, I'd like to dive into how these budgets work with the city. And now the city's put out information. I think it was a little too specific to what I was looking for, but they've reached back out to me and gave me information. So it's not like the city is not working with us. They certainly are. And I thank them very much for that. But, I'm going to make it, my mission as being a board member of Northport Forward is to push us out further, go to different types of groups of people and put our message out there and say, hey, we want to make sure you understand what's happening with your tax dollar, with our surtax money, or with whatever this budget is and that budget is, and how we're going about it. And that's all I can do with Northport Forward. I'm not going to twist people's arms. It's like, here's the information and here's what, you need to know. I'm reading the message here, going to take a little thought.
Go ahead and read Mr. Inglis's out loud.
Great. Going to take a little thought. The simplest answer is daily life, take precedence. Don't believe this is a lack of caring, but believing that their vote doesn't matter. Maybe that's a true statement, Mr. English, but how can we change that? How can we make a person's vote matter? We're not talking strong arm tactics. I'm just talking about, hey, maybe we can get 50 people who have a strong, solid opinion on something to show up at a commission meeting, and these 50 people is not a lot of people when you're talking 75,000 population, but it's hard to get 50 people to show up at a commission meeting who have a particular point of view that they want to express to the commissioners.
And I think the bigger point is they can get 697 to show up at a commission meeting if they talk about Warm Mineral Springs, because those are the 697 people that live in the city that go to Warm Mineral Springs. And when that sort of number shows up at a meeting, that is actually not going to sway the vote against the 9.2 million. It's going to reinforce that they're voting the correct way. And people need to understand that group is organized. That group of people they're doing what they should be doing as an active part of our city. And you got to love what they're doing. You can't hate you can't hate the drive and commitment they have. It's waking up the quiet side or the non-active side that maybe, just maybe, gives us that diversity that Mr. English is talking about when it comes to different topics, so that the city as a whole is now electric with activity from the residents. We don't have that right now. Is that where you're trying to go?
All I can really do is put information out and hope people will make the best decisions. And it really gets down to what they think is the best decision. But if people are not interested because they don't feel like that what they think matters, I know that their vote matters, because everybody has one vote. And if enough people vote for a person or whatever, then that person gets into office. But their ideas matter. Just because people get voted onto the commission doesn't mean citizens are powerless until the next election. So, organizing a bit to get people of a particular thought persuasions, if you will, to show up at commission meetings, to voice their concerns. How can any, decent commissioner, for lack of a better word, ignore a party of 20 or 50 or 100 or whatever people that have a definite position that is maybe not what they're sharing? And so, they've got to take that into account. And if they don't, that's not good for anybody.
Right.
So, in the June 4th meeting, there was maybe a dozen people that were for the 9.2 in the as far as citizens coming. Maybe 4 or 5 that were against or had concerns.
Right.
But the thing is, in next year, in November 22, there's an election, and I think 2 commissioners are up for either re-election or the terming out. I think the mayor is terming out. What if those 2 positions, those 2 commissioners, are replaced with people who just don't see any value in Warm Mineral Springs? Next thing you know, all those park projects that just got defunded just got refunded with $9.2 million that was taken from them this year, and we'll give it back to them next year. Which is why I brought the question up to the commissioners on June 4th was, how are you going to ensure that this commitment to spend this money on Warm Mineral Springs Park actually happens? How are we going to stop you guys, the commissioners, from just taking all or part of that back? So, that's a concern I have, because every election, it seems like we're going to bounce around. So we need to be making good decisions, better decisions, and we need to work off of a plan that's a long-term best interest for this city. And so my goal is to inform, educate, and inspire through Northport Forward.
All right. And we have literally talked for an hour about this now, and I can't believe we chewed up an hour. It seems like one of the hottest topics out there, but I want to give you at least 15 seconds real quick to give your contact information.
Okay. Well, we're on Facebook, and we have our website, which is northportforward.com. Real simple, northportforward.com. Email is northportforward@gmail.com. And in Facebook, just go ahead and look up Northport Forward. It'll bring you right there. And we're looking for people to let us know what you're thinking too. If we're not tackling something that maybe you would like to know more about, let us know. If you want to get involved with our group, send us an email. Say, this is who I am. I've got an interest in this or that topic. And, just let us know you have interest. We will reach back out to you, because we want to work with our fellow citizens to get this information out.
Awesome. Brian, thank you again. I can't wait till next month, because I know you're going to dig some stuff up. Mr. English and Peter Barlow, thanks for chiming in. And Maria, thanks for being